I never thought I'd end up in the middle of something like that. One night, one moment, and suddenly my whole life changed. I was just walking home after closing the cafe, the streets quiet, the air heavy with the kind of silence that makes you look over your shoulder. Then it happened. A scream, a crash, and the sight of something I was never supposed to see. The next thing I knew, there were flashing lights, police tape, and chaos. And him, Officer Blake Carter. Sharp jaw, calm voice, eyes that didn't just see, they read you. He told me I was safe, that he'd make sure nothing happened to me. But the way he said it, there was something else behind it. Something that didn't sound like duty. He started showing up everywhere, outside my building, waiting near the cafe, calling just to check in. At first, I told myself it was protocol, protection, procedure. But late at night, when his voice came through the line softer than it should have, I began to wonder if it was something more. What happens when the one protecting you starts breaking his own rules? Before I tell you how far he went to keep me safe and what I discovered about his past, do one thing. Subscribe, turn on notifications, and stay until the end. Because this isn't just a story about a crime. It's about what happens when safety starts to feel like desire. It had been 3 days since the shooting behind the old gas station, and my life no longer felt like mine. The police told me I was their key witness, the only person who had seen the suspect's face clearly before he disappeared into the night. I couldn't sleep without hearing that sound again, the echo of the gunshot bouncing through the alley. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the flash of light, the silhouette, and the moment the man turned toward me before running. That's when Officer Blake Carter entered my life for real. He came to my apartment the next morning, wearing plain clothes this time, jeans, a dark jacket, and that badge clipped at his belt like a quiet promise. He didn't knock right away. I saw his shadow under the door, hesitating. When I opened it, he looked up, and his eyes met mine like he'd been standing there trying to find the right words. "Eli," he said finally, my name heavy in his voice. "I just wanted to check in. How are you holding up?" I told him the truth, that I wasn't. I'd stopped going to work, kept the blinds closed, jumped at every sound. He listened without interrupting, just standing there, his arms folded, that steady gaze not judging, just there. "I know it's hard," he said, his tone low, almost gentle. "But you're not alone. I'm assigned to your case now, which means for the next few weeks you'll be seeing a lot of me." I tried to smile, but it came out shaky. Guess I should get used to that badge in my doorway. He smirked faintly, a flicker of something softer crossing his face. "You might, but off-duty, I'm not all badge. Just Blake." That was the first time he let me call him by his first name. From that moment, he became a constant, bringing coffee in the mornings, checking that my door was locked at night. Sometimes he'd stay longer than he needed to, just sitting at the small kitchen table, listening to the hum of the refrigerator and the faint city sounds through the window. There were silences between us that didn't feel empty. They felt like something waiting to happen. One night, after another round of questioning downtown, he offered to drive me home. The rain was pouring so hard the wipers couldn't keep up, and when we stopped at a red light, he looked over at me and said, "You keep looking over your shoulder. You think he's still out there, don't you?" I swallowed hard. "Wouldn't you?" He didn't answer right away. The red light painted his face in muted color, making his expression unreadable. Then he reached across and placed a hand over mine on the seat, slow, careful, deliberate. "I won't let anything happen to you," he said. "You have my word." It was supposed to sound professional, protective, but there was something in his voice that made it feel personal. His hand lingered just a second too long before he pulled it away and turned back to the road. Neither of us said another word the whole way home. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about it. About his touch. About how close he had leaned in when he spoke. I told myself it didn't mean anything, that maybe he just wanted to reassure me. But deep down, I knew I'd felt something shift. 2 days later, I found him waiting outside my building again. This time, no badge, no official reason. Just Blake in a gray hoodie leaning against his car with a takeout coffee in each hand. "You shouldn't be out here," I said. "You're off duty. He shrugged, holding out one of the cups. Could say the same about you. I hesitated, then took it. The warmth seeped into my fingers. You're not supposed to get attached to witnesses, right? That made him laugh quietly, eyes dropping to the ground for a second before meeting mine again. You read the manual? Maybe, he stepped closer. Close enough that I could smell the rain still clinging to his clothes. Well, maybe this is one of those cases they don't write about. The air between us felt charged, like every word carried weight. I didn't move, didn't know how to move. Then a car passed, splashing water onto the curb, and the sound snapped us back. He took a step back, clearing his throat. Stay safe tonight, Eli. Lock your door. I will, I said. You'll make sure of it anyway. He gave me that same faint smirk, then walked away, his figure fading into the mist and city lights. That night I dreamed about him. Not about the case or the danger or the crime, just him. His voice, his hand on mine, that look in his eyes when he promised to protect me. And when I woke up, my phone buzzed. A text from Blake. Can't stop thinking about that moment in the car. Coffee tomorrow? My pulse quickened. Maybe I should have ignored it. Maybe I should have remembered that he was a cop, that I was a witness, that this wasn't supposed to happen. But I didn't. I typed back one word, yes. When I pressed send, I didn't know it yet, but that one message would change everything. Because sometimes, protection and desire come dangerously close to being the same thing. The next morning, the city was wrapped in fog, the kind that makes sound feel heavy and turns every face into a blur. I barely slept after Blake's message, replaying that one sentence over and over. Can't stop thinking about that moment in the car. It wasn't what a cop was supposed to say to a witness. It wasn't what anyone was supposed to say when boundaries still mattered. But I didn't care. I'd already crossed the line in my mind. At exactly 9, I heard a knock at my door. Not the sharp official kind. It was softer, almost careful. When I opened it, there he was. No badge, no uniform. Just jeans, a dark sweater, and that quiet look in his eyes that said too much. Morning, he said, lifting a paper bag. Coffee and bagels. I figured you haven't eaten, I laughed nervously. You figured right. He stepped inside without waiting for an invitation. Maybe he didn't need one anymore. My apartment suddenly felt smaller with him in it, like his presence filled every space. He set the bag on the counter and glanced around. You always keep it this clean? Guess I'm nervous around chaos, I replied. He gave a low chuckle. Then I must drive you crazy. I froze for a moment, unsure how to respond. His words weren't just teasing. They were testing the distance between us. We ate breakfast at my small table, the sunlight pushing weakly through the blinds. Every time I looked up, his eyes were already on me. The conversation drifted from the case to meaningless things. The weather, the city, old songs he liked. And yet, beneath all that, there was something unsaid. Finally, I asked, "Why are you here, Blake? Really?" He looked down at his coffee, swirling it like he was stalling for time. You know why? He said finally. I want you to say it. His gaze lifted, meeting mine head on. Because I can't stop thinking about you, Eli. I know it's wrong. I know it's a mess. But every time I tell myself to stay away, I find myself right back here. My chest tightened. You're supposed to protect me, not... He cut me off, voice low but firm. I am protecting you. Maybe that's the problem. The room went quiet again. My pulse felt like thunder in my ears. I wanted to move, to do something. But I just sat there as he leaned closer. Blake, I said quietly, not even sure if it was a warning or a plea. He stopped inches from me, his breath warm against my cheek. Tell me to leave, he whispered. I didn't. Instead, I said, you shouldn't be here. He nodded slowly, eyes flicking between my lips and my eyes. Yeah, he murmured. But I am. And then for a moment, everything stopped. The city outside, the hum of the refrigerator, the rational part of my mind that kept whispering, don't. When he finally pulled back, it wasn't out of regret. It was restraint. We can't do this, he said, standing up. Not now. Not while this case is still open. I nodded, my voice barely a whisper. I know. He left without another word, the door closing behind him with a soft thud that felt heavier than it should have. That night, I couldn't concentrate on anything. The world outside seemed distant, like I was watching it through glass. Every time my phone lit up, I hoped it was him, and when it wasn't, disappointment hit like a wave. But at midnight, the buzz finally came. "Unknown number," I answered anyway. Eli. His voice, low, controlled. "You okay?" "Yeah," I said. "Just thinking about what happened." I hesitated. About what didn't. He was quiet for a long moment, and then, "I can't sleep either." The sound of his voice in the dark was intoxicating. I could hear faint noise behind him. Maybe his police radio, maybe the rain. "Where are you?" I asked. "On patrol," he said. "Near your building," I laughed softly. "Of course you are. I told you I'd keep you safe." I got up and walked to the window. The street was empty except for a single car parked across the road. I could see the faint glow of a phone inside. "I see you," I said. He chuckled under his breath. "Then I guess the secret's out." We stayed like that for a while, not talking, just breathing the same silence from different sides of the glass. It was reckless, stupid, and completely impossible to stop. Then he said something that made my heart skip. "Eli, if this were any other situation, if you weren't my witness—" "But I am," I cut in. "Yeah," he said softly. "You are." For a second, I thought he might hang up. But instead, he said, "Go to bed. Lock your door. I'll stay here till sunrise." I wanted to ask why, but I already knew. When I woke up the next morning, sunlight filled the room. The first thing I did was look out the window. The car was gone. But there was a note slid under my door. "You slept safe last night. B." I held that note in my hand for a long time, tracing the ink with my fingers. It wasn't just a message. It was a confession. And deep down, I knew something had already changed between us, something neither of us could undo, because when protection turns into longing, there's no going back. The next few days blurred together like a half-remembered dream. Blake kept his distance, at least physically, but I could feel him everywhere. In the way I hesitated before opening my blinds, in the hum of my phone late at night, in the quiet certainty that even when I didn't see him, he was there, watching, protecting, wanting. On the 5th day, I saw him again. I was walking home from the grocery store, my hood pulled tight against the drizzle. A black SUV slowed near the corner. My pulse jumped until I saw him step out, wearing his uniform this time, rain streaking the brim of his cap. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. "You've been avoiding me," he said simply. "No accusation, just truth. I thought you wanted space." "I did." I lied. He gestured toward the SUV. "Get in, please." I hesitated, glancing around the empty street. Something in his tone told me this wasn't about us. Not just us. When I climbed in, he didn't speak right away. The windshield wipers moved in a slow rhythm as he stared ahead. "There's been movement," he said finally. "The guy you saw, we think he's back in the city, which means you're not safe here." My chest tightened. "You think he's coming after me?" "I don't think." "I know." His voice was steady, but I could see the tension in his jaw. "You're coming with me tonight. To where?" "Somewhere he can't find you." I almost laughed at the absurdity of it, a cop telling me to run with him. But when I met his eyes, I saw something there that wasn't protocol. It was fear. Not of losing the case, but of losing me. We drove for an hour in silence, the city lights fading behind us. Eventually, the SUV turned onto a narrow road lined with pines, leading to a small cabin by the water. The world here was still. "Too still? This is yours?" I asked when we stepped inside. He nodded. "It was my father's. I come here when I need to think, or when you need to hide." He gave a faint smile. "Maybe both." Inside, the air smelled like cedar and rain. There was a wood stove, a small table, and 2 chairs. He locked the door behind us, set down his weapon, and exhaled like he'd been holding his breath all week. "You trust me, right?" he asked. I hesitated. "I want to." "That's enough," he said quietly. As the night wore on, we talked. about everything except what was really between us. He told me about his father, a cop too, who died in the line of duty when Blake was 15. About how he joined the force not to follow in his footsteps, but to outrun his ghost. And I told him about my brother, the one I lost to violence I never understood. About how that night behind the gas station felt like reliving the same story again, just with me still standing. Maybe that's why I can't stay away from you, he said softly. You remind me that not everyone dies in the story. His words hit something deep. I didn't answer, just stared at the fire until the shadows on the walls began to move like they were alive. When the clock hit midnight, he stood up. You take the bed. I'll stay up. Blake, he held up a hand. Don't argue. I need to be awake if anything happens. But I couldn't sleep knowing he was sitting alone in the dark. Hours later, I got up quietly, padded to the living room, and found him by the window staring out at the rain. His gun was on the table, untouched. You're supposed to rest too, I said. He turned slightly, and even in the dim light I could see the exhaustion in his eyes. If I close my eyes, I see you bleeding. Every time. I can't. I stepped closer before he could finish. Blake, I'm safe now. He looked at me then, really looked, like he was searching for proof in my face. His voice broke when he spoke. I've already lost too many people. I don't know what I'd do if... I touched his arm, just that. A small gesture, but it felt like crossing a line neither of us could go back from. Blake, I said quietly, you don't have to protect me from everything. Maybe I want to, he said, barely above a whisper. We stood there for a long moment, the sound of the rain filling the silence. Then, without thinking, he reached up and brushed a drop of water from my hair, his thumb lingering just a little too long. You're shaking, he said. So are you. He laughed softly, a sound that was half relief, half defeat. You drive me insane, you know that? Yeah, I said. I think that makes two of us. The air between us was heavy, alive. His eyes searched mine for permission that I couldn't quite give. Not yet. So instead of saying anything, I stepped back. You should sleep, I said. He nodded but didn't move. If I do, you'll still be here when I wake up, right? Try me, I whispered. He smiled faintly, that crooked smile that made my stomach twist, then finally walked to the couch. As he lay down, I went to the window, watching the rain fade to mist. Somewhere in the distance, thunder rolled, deep, low, like a warning, and as the firelight flickered across his face, I realized something terrifying. I wasn't afraid of the man who might come for me anymore. I was afraid of how much I already cared for the man who swore to protect me, and by dawn, that fear would prove justified, because not everyone outside that cabin had forgotten who I was. The morning came cold and gray, the kind of silence that feels almost too quiet, like the world is waiting for something to break it. I woke up to the sound of the stove crackling and the smell of coffee drifting through the small cabin. Blake was already up dressed and pacing near the door, his eyes scanning the tree line through the fogged-up window. You didn't sleep, I said softly. He turned, a faint smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. You did. That's what matters. I sat up, pulling the blanket tighter around my shoulders. You're still trying to protect me from everything. He didn't answer. He poured coffee into a chipped mug and handed it to me. His hands brushed mine for a moment, just a touch, but it was enough to make my pulse skip. You really think he'll come here? I asked. Blake looked back at the window. He's not stupid. If he knows you saw his face, he knows you're under protection. And if he knows that, he'll want to make sure you never testify. I swallowed hard. So, we're just waiting? For now, he said, until I figure out the next move. But I could see it. The weight in his eyes, the tension in his shoulders. This wasn't just about a case anymore. He was fighting something deeper, something between duty and desire. By midday, the fog outside had lifted, revealing the dense pine forest surrounding us. Blake checked the perimeter, his hand never straying far from his holster. I watched him through the window, the way he moved, calm but alert, every sense alive. When he came back inside, his jacket was damp, his hair slightly tousled. All clear, he said, brushing off a drop of rain. For now, I echoed. You keep saying that. He looked at me for a long moment. Because I don't make promises I can't keep. I stood up, stepping closer. And what about the ones you already made? He hesitated. Which one? That you'd protect me, I said. Even from yourself. For a second, something flickered in his eyes. Vulnerability, maybe guilt. You think I'm the one you need protection from? I took a breath. I think I'm the one who's in danger of falling for you. The words left my mouth before I could stop them. Blake froze. His lips parted slightly, but no sound came out. Then he exhaled, slow and deliberate. Eli, he said, his voice low, strained. You don't know what you're saying. I do, I whispered. You feel it too. He turned away, running a hand through his hair. It doesn't matter. It can't. I walked closer until I was right behind him. Tell me that when you look at me, you don't feel anything. He stayed silent. The air between us was thick with everything unspoken. Finally, he turned around, his expression unreadable. You have no idea what this would cost me. Then why are you still here? I asked. That broke him. He took a slow step forward, his hand lifting like he wanted to reach for me, but stopped halfway. His breath was unsteady. Because I can't walk away. We stood there, inches apart, hearts beating in the same rhythm, when a sudden noise shattered the moment, the distant crack of a branch snapping outside. Blake's entire body shifted in an instant. The warmth in his eyes vanished, replaced by sharp, trained focus. He grabbed his gun and motioned for me to stay back. Stay here, he said, his voice calm but urgent. He moved to the window, scanning the trees. Another sound followed, closer this time. My chest tightened. Blake. He raised a hand to silence me. A few tense seconds passed, the forest holding its breath with us. Then another sound. Heavy footsteps crunching on wet leaves. Blake turned to me. Get down! I crouched behind the couch, my heart racing. The door handle rattled once. Then silence. Blake aimed his gun, muscles tense. The handle moved again, and then the door burst open. Wind, rain, and mud flying in. A man stumbled in, soaked and trembling. For a second, I thought it was him, the shooter. But when the light hit his face, I saw it was someone else, a ranger, wearing a torn jacket and a deep gash across his arm. Please, the man gasped. There's someone out there. He's armed. Blake was at his side instantly, checking the wound. Where? Down the ridge, the ranger panted. He shot at me when I tried to call for backup. Blake's jaw tightened. He looked at me, his eyes fierce. Stay inside. No matter what you hear. Blake, he didn't let me finish. You hear me, Eli? Lock the door. Don't move until I come back. And before I could stop him, he was gone, disappearing into the rain-soaked woods with nothing but his weapon and his determination. I ran to the window, watching him vanish between the trees. My chest ached with fear, not just of the danger outside, but of what might happen if he didn't come back. Minutes stretched into hours. Thunder rumbled in the distance, and every sound outside made me flinch. Then, just when I thought I couldn't take it anymore, a figure emerged from the mist. It was Blake, his uniform streaked with mud, his face pale but determined. He was holding his shoulder, blood seeping through his sleeve. I ran to him, my voice breaking. You're hurt! He waved me off, closing the door behind him. It's nothing. He's gone. What do you mean gone? Ran off, he said, his breathing heavy. But he won't stay gone for long. I guided him to the chair, grabbing a towel from the kitchen. You need stitches. I've had worse, he muttered, wincing as I pressed the towel against his wound. Our eyes met, and in that moment, the fear, the adrenaline, the raw relief all collided. I thought you weren't coming back, I whispered. He gave a faint, tired smile. I told you, Eli, I'd never leave you unprotected. The towel slipped from my hand. I didn't care anymore about rules or consequences. I leaned forward, my voice trembling. You don't have to protect me anymore, I said. You just have to stay. His eyes softened. You have no idea how much I want to. And then, before either of us could think, I kissed him. It wasn't planned. It wasn't gentle. It was everything that had been building since the night in the car: fear, longing, gratitude, and something that felt dangerously close to love. When he finally pulled back, his voice was hoarse. Eli. But whatever he was going to say, it was lost, because outside, another sound broke through the storm. A car engine. Someone else had found the cabin, and this time, Blake wasn't sure they'd survive it. The roar of the engine outside froze us both. Blake's body tensed instantly, his hand gripping his gun even as blood soaked his sleeve. The headlights cut through the rain and swept across the cabin's wooden walls like white knives. Whoever it was, they hadn't come to talk. "Stay here," Blake said, his voice low but commanding. "Not this time," I whispered. "You're hurt. You can't face him alone." He turned to me, his jaw set. "If something happens to you because of me, then it happens with you," I interrupted. "I'm not hiding while you bleed for me again." For a moment, our eyes locked, defiance against fear. Then, with a reluctant nod, he handed me a flashlight. "Stay behind me, no matter what." The night outside was heavy with rain. It fell in sheets, drenching us instantly as we stepped off the porch. The car's headlights were still on, the engine idling, the door open, empty. "Blake," I said softly. "He's here." He scanned the tree line, gun raised. "He's watching us, waiting for a shot." "Then make him wait longer," I said, forcing a shaky breath. Lightning flashed, and for a brief second I saw him. The man from that night, standing between the pines, his face half lit, a weapon glinting in his hand. "There!" I shouted, the moment shattered into chaos. Blake fired once, twice, thunder masking the sound. The man ducked behind a tree, returning fire. The air crackled with adrenaline and rain. I hit the ground, mud splashing against my face. "Eli!" Blake yelled, crouching beside me. "Get back inside!" "I'm not leaving you!" He cursed under his breath, grabbing my arm. "Then stay low." Another shot whizzed past us, hitting the wooden post inches from Blake's head. He fired again, then pressed his back against the porch, breathing hard. "He's trying to draw us out." I looked at him, drenched, shaking, eyes sharp with both fear and something deeper. "You're bleeding more," I said. He ignored it. "Doesn't matter." "Yes, it does," I shouted, grabbing his wrist. "You matter!" He froze, his gaze locking onto mine. And for that heartbeat, we both forgot the danger. Forgot the gunfire. Forgot the storm. It was the sound of a twig snapping that brought us back. The man was closer now. Blake moved before I could stop him, stepping out from cover, using himself as bait. "Blake, no! Stay down!" He barked, then ran toward the trees. The rain swallowed him whole. For seconds that felt like forever. I couldn't breathe. Every crack of thunder could have been a gunshot. Every gust of wind could have been his last breath. Then, silence. "Blake!" I called out, my voice breaking. A shadow emerged from the darkness. I raised the flashlight, and there he was, limping toward me, his face streaked with rain and blood, but alive. The gunman lay unconscious behind him, his weapon kicked aside. "It's over," Blake said, his voice barely a whisper. I ran to him, my heart pounding. "You're hurt," he shook his head. "Just grazed." He's not getting back up. And then finally, something inside me broke. The fear, the exhaustion, the love I'd tried to deny. I threw my arms around him, holding him as tightly as I could. He hesitated for a second before his arms came around me, pulling me close. "It's okay," he whispered. "You're safe now." But I could feel his body trembling against mine. He was saying it for me, not for himself. When we finally stepped back inside the cabin, the fire had nearly burned out. The only light came from the weak glow of the embers and the rhythmic flash of lightning outside. Blake dropped his gun on the table, collapsing into the chair with a sigh. "I should call it in," he said after a long moment. "They'll want to know what happened." I shook my head. "Do it later. Just breathe for now." He smiled faintly. "You sound like you're the one taking care of me." "Maybe I am," I said. He looked up at me then, something raw and unguarded in his eyes. "You shouldn't have come into this world of mine, Eli. It's dark. It swallows people whole. Then why did you pull me into it?" I asked softly. He didn't answer. Instead, he reached out, fingers brushing my hand, tracing the small cut on my knuckle. "Because you made me feel alive again," he said finally. And that scared me more than any bullet ever could. The rain outside softened into a gentle patter, like the world itself was exhaling. "What happens now?" I asked. He leaned back, closing his eyes for a moment. "Now, I'll probably lose my badge. The department doesn't look kindly on crossing lines." I took his hand. "And was it worth it?" He opened his eyes, tired, bruised, but honest. "Every second." We sat there for a while, saying nothing, just listening to the storm fade away. His thumb moved slowly over my palm, grounding me in the quiet aftermath. Eventually, I stood and crouched beside his chair. "You need to lie down," I said. He chuckled. "Bossy." "Alive," I corrected. "You're alive. That's all that matters." He looked at me for a long time, his gaze tracing every part of my face as if committing it to memory. Then he said almost to himself, "You're the one thing I never expected to find in this job, something worth living for." My throat tightened. "You don't have to go back to being a cop," he smiled sadly. "It's who I am." "Then let me be part of who you are," I said. His expression softened, and for the first time, there was no hesitation between us. He reached up, cupping my face with his rough hand, and kissed me. Not like the first time, desperate, uncertain, but like a promise. When he pulled away, he whispered, "You'll never have to be afraid again." And for once, I believed him. Outside, dawn broke over the forest, the first fragile light of morning spilling across the wet earth. The world was still scarred, still imperfect, but it was ours. We both knew what awaited beyond that cabin: questions, consequences, maybe even separation. But as he held me close, the badge on his chest pressing against my heartbeat, I realized something simple and unshakable. Love doesn't always arrive when the world says it should. Sometimes it comes dressed in danger, bleeding, broken, but real. And when it does, you don't run, you stay. Because sometimes, even in the chaos of a storm, you find the one person who makes you feel safe enough to stand in the rain.